welcome to the Book Over, our book club where we talk about the books that give us hangovers. I decided to change that. I am Sarah, with me is Megan.
Hi.
And today we are talking about Darling Venom by, what is it, Parker
S.
Huntington. Okay, I couldn't remember the S. I was like, it's an initial. Yeah.
Which I like. The funny thing is, Sarah first told me about the book like in last February when it came out, and like I just wasn't feeling enemies to lovers at the moment or MF, and so we didn't read it for the podcast, and then it was on my TBR, and then I read it, and I like fell in love, and then like Sarah, you were right, it's so good. So now Sarah's finally read it like a couple months after I read it. But you told me first. You're the one who told me about it.
I told you about it. I wanted to read it. You turned it down, and I was like,
I
you know
did.
what? I won't read it right now. And then now I'm like, gosh, we should have read it.
And that's what I said. That's exactly what I said at the time that I read it. I'm like, why? We should have read this sooner. I said, the next time a big book blows up and you're like, let's read it. I'm like, I'm doing it. We're reading it. Like, lesson learned.
Yeah. It was So I literally just finished it today. So I'm still in that book hangover part of dealing with this book. I love that it's a standalone, and I love how in depth it is and all the layers to it. I'm like, I don't even know if I can fully give in one episode justice to all the things that are in here.
Woven, what's all the little things woven in. The writing is fantastic. So I was like, it's poetic, it's beautiful. There's all this. It's a romance, but it's your morning, and it's just like beautifully written. And then at the very end of the book, because Sarah and I are both people that like read everything in the book. I will say, when I read that she like went to Harvard for writing, I was like, okay, well that makes sense. She went to like one of the best. Not that I'm saying you have to go to Harvard to be a great writer. Obviously, we do so many indie books. You don't have to, but it made sense. I was like, well, this tracks because she's an amazing writer, and her work, just such beautiful words and a beautiful way that she weaves the story.
Well, I feel like I was there with them the whole time. So I feel like I went through everything. I feel all that. What is up with us with our Valentine's Day episode being the one that makes me cry?
That sounds about right for Valentine's Day.
Right? Because I seriously, when Charlotte meets, I feel like, and I was even thinking about it today, like, is this really a romance? And it is a romance. It's just it's a different, and I love how they tied in how love and loss and tragedy and all those things, and but it's all the parts, right? Like part 1, part 2, part 3 of the story, because there are parts to it, and then just even meeting them meeting on the rooftop and how that happened. And then I'm reading it, and I think that's when, gosh, I forgot how many chapters in I was when I'm finally texting Megan, and I'm like, I know something's bad's gonna happen, and I don't want it to happen. I'm like, no, please don't have that actually happen.
Well, the good thing about about that we didn't read it right away is because when we first read it, we first heard about it, I had personally heard, I think I heard it was a brother's best friend. But when it had been so long, I think I forgot, and I started thinking, wait, is this a brother's best friend? Is this the love interest? So it's kind of cool if you get to go into it blind, not knowing, hey, this guy is going to be her friend. It kind of seems like a love interest, but he's gonna, die. But I love that they had this friendship that could have been love, which is just kind of beautiful. And just the way that was, the way that depression is portrayed, I feel like there's a lot of realism in it. It was handled beautifully.
Almost every character, there's at least 4 of them, 5, who have some kind of depression going on.
Yeah, and tragic traumas, and
and Cal did love her, And that's why
Yeah.
he
Oh
stayed
yeah.
away, because he knew, and I loved the snippets of his book, but he knew that he
Oh
was
my
really the
God,
venom,
right.
he was the toxic one, and that's why
Hmm.
he never let anything happen, because he knew he wasn't good for her.
Yeah.
It was just like, and not that it's okay, it's, that he did what he did, like, it's just like,
Yes.
it's just, it was so, I'm so, define the words, you guys. I'm having
Hmm.
a hard time finding the words. Besides, I
Yeah.
loved his book, and I loved, yeah, and I was, how do I say it? I loved that first part with him in there,
Yeah.
and then you meet Tate, and you're just like, he's such an ass. He's
Hmm.
such an ass, and he knows he's an ass. And it was just like, but I loved how Charlie was like, he's an ass, to like, to more understanding him, to, I'm going to help you.
To
And then,
grieving with him. They
mm-hmm,
were able to like because they both cared about this person and they're both kind of solo people that person meant something to them. So that was nice that they had this bond over it.
yeah, yeah. I just, sorry.
It was, I know because it's because you read a lot of books and boy like sometimes you'll go through like trying to find something and then you'll hit like one of those books that's just like such a rare gem of a book that you're just like blows you away. You're just like wow, this is a unique story. Like you said, you're with it the characters. There's just something, some books just have characters that are so well written that you are like sucked into the story. You're invested in the characters. The characters are well rounded. It's not like a flat here's the story. Like these characters feel so real to you and it
Mhm.
feels like you're there.
Yeah.
And that's just a different, it's a different level of book.
Hmm.
Not I'm not saying other books can't be good, you can't enjoy
Right.
them, but this is on like another level to
It was
me.
on such a, I don't think I've highlighted as much as I
Mm.
have in
Yes.
so long. And it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
quotes from books, or just a
Yes.
single line quote.
Mm-hmm.
There was one I highlighted, like, okay, it was his voicemail. I highlighted the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It took Tate forever to
I start
listen to
crying.
that
Yes.
voicemail. And I was like, dude, you need to listen. And I know how scary that had to be. You to be like,
Oh
what is
yeah.
he gonna say? What is this going to
Mm-hmm.
say? But it's like, for him to, what was that, 5 years later, 4 years, 5 years later, something like
It
that.
might have been five at that point. Because wasn't it four when they met, and then five, like, because it had been over the course of like a year, so
Mhm.
maybe five.
I think it was about 5, because he
Okay.
met her again. He said, like, they found each other on the rooftop, and like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mhm.
yeah, but yeah, it was this him, and then her too, like, finding that letter from her sister. I was like, oh, I would have been
Mhm.
so, I mean, she was mad, and I would have been like, I agree, I would have been livid. That,
Livid.
why wouldn't you,
Mhm.
there were so many questions where I was like, it's just a study of humans too, like our
Think so.
humanity, and why we do the things we do. Because it was like, why would you not, you might be angry with your sister, but if somebody showed up and handed, why wouldn't you give it to her, and then why did you keep it?
Mhm.
It was like, it was just
Because
all those.
subconsciously, it's like she knew. Well,
Mhm,
and that's it's also a study of sibling relationships because you have
mhm,
her and her sister,
mhm,
Tate and his brother. So it's interesting to have these sibling dynamics.
mhm,
And it's not like pretty book sibling dynamics. It's like real gritty, and that's how it is sometimes with siblings.
mhm.
Sometimes there's rivalries, and I mean, because there's no one you grew up with them.
Yeah,
There's just and with family in general. I mean, and
the
it's like
whole.
he knew. I think deep down he knew his father. He like idolized his father, kind of. Like, well, he did. It seemed like he did, but he knew. He
Mhm.
was at that point where I think he knew that his father was like, stealing from him, and Tate was
Oh yeah.
trying his best. Tate was trying his
Oh yeah.
best, and the way that she went into it, like she, got that first meeting with like him, that was an interesting first encounter.
Right.
But like how she, yeah, and she totally is from his point of view of like, this is how you were, the girlfriend was this, and then he had a whole other side of the
Mhm,
story because
mhm,
he was a teenage boy, and you are getting pieces of it. So
mhm.
I like that we got his book where we could actually see what was happening and that he had more perspective on things than we thought.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
he even,
mhm.
I loved how he was like, you're always going to be that asshole to me.
Hmm.
Like, but,
Yeah.
like, he even,
Hmm.
I love that way he wrote in the book, and I love how she pushed Tate so much
Pushed
to
him.
read the book with the
Yes.
posters,
Put it on the wall.
and he finally
Yes.
gave, and I was like, yes, because
Hmm.
those, because without that, you get like those little snippets, and you're like, okay,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm the asshole, and he just, the regret of not seeing the signs, and I've been
Hmm.
there, like there's been things that happened in my life where I'm like, I wish I knew. If I knew, I could have helped. But
Yeah.
then it's like, it's just like her, like she knew, but she didn't. She's like, I didn't try hard enough. Well, honey, you did. You were a teenager,
Did. Hmm.
alone. You tried.
Hmm.
There was
She wrote that letter,
a lot of
and
things.
then after she wrote the letter, he like cut her off. He was so mad at her. So like, what is she supposed to do? She really did try. She showed up at his house. Like she called the cops.
Mhm.
I mean, he called the cops. So she did try to the best of her capabilities as a teenager.
Yeah.
So I mean, and especially when she's in that position too, she was suicidal.
Mhm.
She was depressed. So that's a lot for somebody who's going through something else.
Something
So
too.
I love the nuances of that. And unfortunately, that's the reality, is that people do take their own lives,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And I like that this book wasn't scared to explore that and the aftermath of it.
Mhm. I agree. Yeah.
It
And I
was,
think
it
that's
was,
why I
it,
love it so
it was
much, because it was so
me too.
real. As a reader, you're there experiencing all those levels of grief and all those, like, gosh, and like as a reader, you're like, oh yeah, I mean, what could you have done? Like you put yourself in the
Hmm.
shoes and like, did you do enough? And it's like, can you, like, because like honestly, like Charlie, I'm surprised she didn't blame her sister on his suicide because she didn't give the note. When did the note arrive?
Yeah.
And then she's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, does it? Because did it arrive when she sent you out? Or did it arrive earlier
Hmm.
in the day? If it arrived early in the day, you might have been able to get there on time. Like, how did it?
Yeah.
It magically worked out for everything to line up with the Tate being busy
Hmm.
and all that stuff. Like, it was, anyways,
That
it
was
was just
hard. That was
so,
hard.
it was really hard. And
Yeah.
what I really liked is there are like steamy scenes. There's the
Yes.
like her exam scene.
That was
Like,
a different scene.
that was,
It's refreshing when you read a lot of steamy romance to have
mm,
something different.
yes. I liked how there was, you could feel that, like, I want to be with this person, but like it
Hmm.
also, I kind of liked how it wasn't just jumping in being together, because they
Yes.
both needed to
Yes.
heal first. So it's like,
Hmm.
I'm not just using you as a crutch to do this. Like, they were friends. They ended up being friends, and then went into it romantically, even though they had those like lust feelings. Like, I liked it, like
Hmm.
now and then, like there would be a kiss or like the exam or the,
Yeah.
whatever happened, but it didn't full blown come into anything more until much later into the story. And I really liked that. Like, as a romance
Hmm.
reader, you would think you would want like a lot more, but I really, with the grief and stuff, I'm like, there's no way this relationship isn't going to be toxic unless
Yeah.
they get through this
Hmm.
before starting a relationship. And that she was worried about him, Tate, being like, oh, you're Cal's girl, you're not mine. And that did kind of happen.
And he had a lot of guilt over that. That's
Mhm.
what he was thinking. That was a
Mhm.
huge part of it for him.
Yeah, and that's why I love the voicemail. I love the letter
Hmm.
to Charlie, and I love the book. Like, I just feel like all those pieces, put it.
Woven, fit together. Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree. I feel like these days so many people are looking for like a lot of steam. They want it early. I think I'm at a point where I want a full story. First of all, I love the size, like I said, standalone, but there was like enough. I always say this, there needs to be enough words to tell the story properly where it doesn't feel rushed and you get to know the characters and you're satisfied with it. And I found that with this book. But like you said, with the steam, I just feel like, and even the romance, I feel like I feel like the whole thing was a romance, even the grief. It's you get a whole picture of how this relationship comes to fruition. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's more
Yes.
satisfying to me than having like you said, having them like jump bones early on and then having, oh, this is weird, blah blah blah, and dealing with all that. We
Yes.
dealt with like this serious stuff. It's different because that's what all the books are doing, that have some steam in it. So I liked that it had a slower burn. And that's the thing about slow burn. Do people say that slow burn is the romance or slow burn is the steam or both? Because I don't mind. I want romance, I don't mind like a slow burn when it comes to the steamy stuff
Right.
because I still have the romance. And
Mhm.
to me the romance is like right, that's what I want. So
I want to feel the feels.
feel
So
the
like
feels,
I want
yes.
to feel that angst, and I we got that
Mhm.
like, I don't know. Even the like I don't know how I ended up, but I ended up outside on her street. Like those kind of
Yeah.
things where, it's just like it just
No.
happened, and yeah.
Mhm.
So it's like, but this like, yeah, I need to feel the feels. I don't want to be told the feels. Like
Yes.
it's a mixture of like inner thoughts, the conversations, and then just the scenes overall. And I feel like
Mhm.
that just, even from them, like, Charlie trying to protect everybody in that family, really, with like the
Yeah.
book and like between her boss, like not spilling the beans and keeping things to
Mhm.
herself and stuff. It's just like, she's amazing. Like, I'm like, you're
Yeah, she
amazing.
was.
Yeah.
And then she was really great with her dad, and that's the
I hated him. I did not like him at all. I was like, "You're a deadbeat. You
yeah.
don't deserve any of
Mhm.
your kids. You don't deserve to be around her." Like, I full blown felt what
Mhm.
I probably should have felt about him until the end when he started working on the book with her in that very ending where he just like,
Mhm.
he just turned for the better. And then when she gave him the book in the library, it was like, oh my goodness. And then
Mhm.
him confessing at the end too was like he needed to do it.
He
So,
did. He
yeah.
felt, and I like that he felt the guilt for it. It
Mhm.
shows his human side. And then I think maybe that's another reason he drowned himself in drugs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He sold his son his manuscript and felt guilty. And he was, like an alcoholic and a drug addict and was trying to change it around.
Mhm.
And I like there were times I was thinking, oh, like I agree, like with like he's no good, kick him out. And she was like, oh no, he's your father, and I'm like, and the family you have, and I'm like, yeah, because I had a feeling. I think you and I both guessed the plot twist because I
Mhm.
like to think we're kind of savvy readers. So we saw like the little breadcrumbs to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did end up winning me over later as well. He had a certain charm to him when he was working on the book, and then you could just tell that he wanted that relationship back with
Mhm.
the son he had, and he felt bad about
Yeah.
what happened with the son he didn't, and he owned up to it. That's a big thing
Yes. Yes.
in a public forum, which
Yeah.
I thought was really,
Mhm.
really great.
Well, and I loved how, he was there for Tate, like he brought
Mm,
him the greasy food that one day, and then when he
yeah.
finally read Darling Venom, he like dropped off water for him. So once he
Hmm.
was sober, he was very intuitive on these things, and he was there for him in those little gestures.
Hmm.
And I love how like Tate, you look at Tate and he's this like high-end OB, like
Very
he's
high
wearing
end.
suits, he's like sought after, and then he's falling apart. Like he is not as put together as you think he is, and he's
Hmm.
literally just falling apart. And you can see that, like he literally just hits rock bottom in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably could have hit a little harder, but like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't. I mean,
Yeah,
it could have been a lot worse.
it
And
could have
so
been.
like
Yeah.
I liked that too, that like the one person in this whole story who just like when you first meet them seems so put together, and then you're like, oh no,
Hmm.
they're not. Like they're like
Hot mess
a
deep
hot
down,
mess.
and that's why the way he is constructed himself is to keep himself together. Because if he deviates, he's gonna
Hmm.
fall apart.
Yeah.
Well, and I had thought I read that it said like this was like enemies to lovers and like and I'm like I don't know if I would call it enemies to lovers. I would say that they had like a banter or a push pull type of thing. I don't know if I'd call it enemies. I'd call it like I don't know what I'd call it to friends to lovers. It's just
Yeah.
I like that it wasn't super enemies. Like
No, it
going
wasn't.
into that's sometimes I can stress you out. It was just enough. It
Mhm.
was just enough of there being like a push pull kind of thing with them,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, what would I put this under?
right?
Because even calling
Right?
it like
I think it's
a,
put under
brothers,
best friend.
best friend.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
then again, yeah, exactly. Does it even match that? Because like they were, but he's passed, and then he kind of liked
yeah.
her, so it's a whole. It's its own thing, which I love. It kind of can fit in those genres, and then it kind of doesn't, which makes it perfect because it's its own unique thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think it just
Hmm.
needs its own thing. Like, just it's a good read, and everybody should read it.
Such a good read.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this was one like a book that, like, even you said like you were waiting to be in the right mood for, and I think you can
Yeah.
pick this up and read it, I don't think you have to be in the right mood for it because it will make you be in the right mood for it.
Yeah, you can fall into the right mood for this one
Yeah.
for sure. I totally get that. Like this is one of those books
Hmm. It was just so
for
good. I'm
sure.
sorry. I wish I had more, and I'm sure I bet like in a few days I'll be like,
You
okay,
will.
and what about
Yeah.
this scene and that scene, and then, but
Hmm.
but oh, and you know what? It was hard too. Is like the day of we get Charlie's perspective,
Hmm.
and then later when we get Tate's like timeline rundown that the therapist made him do, and then
Hmm.
finding out, the twins that were born, was it twins or triplets? And one was
Twins,
named after
I
him,
think.
and he was so excited to
Yeah.
go home and
Oh, one
tell
was
him,
named
and
after
you're
his
just like,
brother. I know.
oh,
Oh,
oh.
the fact that the same night that he passed, that one of the twins was named after him.
Mhm,
Oh, that it breaks your heart.
mhm, mhm.
It's so sad. But
Yeah.
again, it's like tragically beautiful is the way I
Mhm.
would describe it.
Oh yeah.
Tragically beautiful.
And then you also think because he's
His
an
life,
OBGYN that he's, bringing these
bring
things in
life.
the role, but how many times did he mention a stillborn or
Yeah.
stuff in it? And so it's like he's not just dealing with birth. He's dealing with a
Hmm.
lot of not fun things that we don't really think
Disappointment
of.
from mom. Yeah,
Hmm.
like the mom who was her like last run.
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of stuff that's
Yeah.
wearing on him.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things where you get to the end of the book and you're like, you find out, like he proposes and he wants to do it on the rooftop to give a good memory for the rooftop for
To
her.
rewrite that memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Hmm.
I loved that. And then to find
Me
out, the
too.
next part is like them married with a baby on the way. And I was like, yes, like
Hmm.
I was like, and sometimes I don't like that kind of thing, but I really felt it for them because I'm like, they have that foundation now. They have that
They do.
rock foundation. She said the best foundation is rock. And I'm like, they have
Hmm.
that now. And I just was so happy for them because they went through, we got to go through it, the whole journey.
Hmm.
And so I was like, this is one of those ones where I'm like proud. I'm proud of I'm proud of her
Right? Oh, well, thank
sister.
you.
I'm proud of
Hmm.
the dad. I'm proud of these two. Like, I'm like, and I'm proud of, Darling Venom getting out there and
Yeah.
everything. Like, even the Harvard letter, and she's like, wait, you got accepted in Harvard, and then she finds out like why he did it, how, all that stuff.
Hmm.
You're like, oh, like, yeah. But I think,
And
and she
it,
was,
hmm
Charlie figured it out. Like, he just held off for her. Like,
for her. Yes.
he was
And
gonna do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Darling Venom was his legacy.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes, unfortunately, like that's that's what's gonna happen. And I like that we found that out later,
Yeah.
that she found that out.
Yeah.
I also like that we had a fun scene at the end because it is an intense book and there are funny scenes and there are sad scenes and beautiful scenes, but like that last bit was kind of funny at the library and they're trying to escape. I thought that was a fun a fun ending scene.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially as a family, like,
Hmm.
when they're all like, even take and deal with he's trying to help his dad. So I enjoyed
Yeah.
that scene.
Yeah. I
That
did
was
too.
fun.
It was good.
Yeah.
Such a good
It
read.
was just so well written.
Hmm.
I'm
Sorry.
looking forward to whatever this author does next because like
Okay, I have
I'm
to admit,
obsessed with her. Hmm.
I never read beyond like a few pages of a book she wrote, and I was like, it's a mafia one. I don't, is it like
Hmm.
Devious Lies or
Yeah, I think that's on my
something?
TBR,
It
something
was,
like that.
I got it once on like
Hmm.
KU. I opened it, I fell asleep reading the first chapter, and I never went back to it because I was like, I fell asleep reading it, which I do all the time
Hmm.
now. Back then I didn't. And now I'm like,
Don't we
okay, I need
all?
to read it
Okay.
because like I don't,
Yeah,
and I was like, now they have this, like, now this is going to be like a go-to author. I'm really excited. I'm excited to
me
see
too.
what else because this is the first
Hmm.
technically and only full book I've finished of her. So I'm like,
Same,
mhm,
same.
mhm.
So that's the one that's on my TBR for her to try
Okay.
to read fully as well. I think I read like a chapter or two just to see like just to get a like a feel for it. So I'm looking forward to. But it also seems similar where it was like, I was it in parts or ages? It had like a similar, I think, formatting, which I was excited for. So I was like, okay, this looks
Mhm,
good.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's
Yeah,
definitely on my TBR for when I'm in the right mood. So
absolutely. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I love that. I love the age thing
Mhm.
too, and the date
Oh yes,
and
yes, and I
everything.
think that's also a thing in that other book too, is an age thing.
Oh, I love it.
So there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All right.
if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, maybe we'll do a follow-up episode where I have a rant on like all the scenes.
Right.
Right.
Well, I would say for this one, for book overs or for people looking for something similar, like, like I put in the same category as like Say You Swear, the words,
Mhm,
the choice. It's
mhm.
like in that kind of emotional read for me.
Yes, because I even
Mhm.
was telling my husband about the book, and I was like, I kind of want you to read this. I've been trying to get him to read for like over a year now. And I was like, I want you to read this, but I don't think you're ready.
I don't
So
think
I
you're
was like
right.
pointing to books on my shelf. I'm like, I
Mhm.
think that one, Say You Swear, would be a good start for you. And after you read that
Yeah.
one, then you can read this one. And he's like, okay.
That I think that makes sense.
Mhm. Like
That
ease
makes
you
sense.
into the traumance. Like it just
Yeah.
ease you into it.
The romance, exactly.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on the book. Over.
Bye.